a lot from each other over I think it was 2.5, 3 hours we spoke. To answer your question about bias, bias is one of those human tendencies that we all have. And it's based on, how we process different things very quickly, needing to have to do that because we're bombarded with information on a daily basis. We all have bias, but as we get into the rest of this conversation, we can talk about the elephant in the room, the unconscious bias, because that's really where the challenges come for people and what they experience. But biases, having bias, heck, bias towards a certain way of communicating. I like texting over talking face to face now. If you think that you don't have a bias, you really do in some cases. I'm biased towards dogs. Those of you who know me, I love my Spike as opposed to cats. However, when it turns into a prejudging and a stereotype and a discrimination, that's when that's where the rubber meets the road per se. And that's where we get those sandpaper moments and those feelings that we'll talk about later. Did that kind of help the definition for you, Kim?
I think so. Thank you, Willa.
Yeah.
Here's a question, and I don't know what to how to refer to bias. Is it correct to say you are biased or you have bias, or is it both?
It's kind of both. I would say it would be both, because we like I said earlier, we have them, and we're going to be biased, right? Around certain experiences and certain things that we have in our lives, right? The problem becomes when it starts to turn into something else, that it keeps you from making good decisions. I'm going to read something for you that, you know me, I got a book for you all the time, right? And this is a great one, and she's not even paying me, right? Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt said, bias is not something we exhibit and act on all the time. It's conditional, and the battle begins by understanding the conditions under which is most likely to come alive. Among those conditions, speed and ambiguity are the strongest triggers of bias. When we are forced to make quick decisions using subjective criteria, the potential for bias is great. So when you think about, our brains use as shortcuts to process information all the time. Psychology Today says it's about 11 million pieces of information at any given moment. And Lord knows that as I'm a woman of a certain age, I'm feeling those 11 million pieces. But we're only able to really process 40. So we've got to make some very quick decisions, and sometimes they're not going to be good ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, everybody, what you're saying has bias. Everybody. It's not just a white thing or a woman thing or a man. Everybody. Okay.
No. Everybody's got a bias. The unconscious bias is that feeder that gets us in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples that you'd like to share with us? Maybe some things that would impact the lives of the women that we serve, and the women that serve them.
Let me kind of start with the unconscious bias piece.
Okay.
And where that kind of flows into the impact that you or I or any one of the participants on the call may be facing, right? So we've got these biases, say for instance, around age, gender, height, right? They say the average man is not, what is it about? The CEOs are 6 feet and taller, right? Except for Bezos, I don't think he's that tall. But most of the CEOs are tall men, but the average man is not that tall. But there is a bias towards height. There's a bias on weight, right? And they are kind of those unconscious, subjective ways that we make decisions. And that's where it's inaccurate, it's incomplete, it's known as implicit bias.
Okay.
It's known as, for an example, a property manager does a background check on all African Americans who apply to rent in his property, but he doesn't do that with whites. That's an implicit bias. And unconsciously, it's an unconscious bias as well, because those terms work hand in hand, but it's based on some stereotypical prejudging that he's made in order to do that, right? And even on a purely innocent way, you could look at, there's this term called affinity bias, and it's another term for likes like. So you gravitate to people that are like you. So in your hiring process, in your selection process, you're picking people that look like you, may come from the same school that you do, same education, same area, all of those, and those are biases. And when you act on those, you're impeding the possibility of some fabulous people based on those stereotypes and based on those biases.
Okay. So it's really, you're sticking with what's comfortable and what you know, instead
Yeah.
of branching out.
Right. And depending upon where that happens, you might say, well, why not? Right. But if you are in the workplace, or if you look at all of the systemic racism that's going on right now in healthcare, the disparities in healthcare, the disparities in renting, banking, all of those. I did not know this until later, because I wasn't familiar with it. But I remember I found out about the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she made it possible for women to have bank accounts and be able to be financially independent. And that bias that was created, okay, from where?
Right.
It was the perception and belief and a discrimination that women did not do that. Women weren't they were homemakers. They didn't need that level of independence. And you might say, well, yeah, those are some ugly times. Bias and discrimination can be a good thing. And you probably say, now, Willa, how the heck are you going to sit there after you just said all that, right? But when I thought about it, when you go to a movie theater, when we go back to a movie theater, right? The movie theaters charge a lower price for children and seniors. But the equity and understanding that what goes on with that age group, you could say that they were discriminating on age, even though, and it's an advantage to that particular group. But it's the ones that, and you asked me the question about the impact, is when they start acting like paper cuts.
And what do you mean by paper cuts?
So you mentioned about the members of Dress for Success. So I have been very blessed and humbled to touch about 250 of those women, and some of them are on the call now, and I love you dearly. And it's those subtle slights that they have gotten in the workplace, and sometimes at Dress for Success. I'm going to be honest, you know me, I'm a truth teller. It's these subtle things that just wear at you. It's the fact that you introduce yourself as Catherine and somebody keeps calling you Kate. Somebody is wanting to touch your hair. Someone will sit there and say, well, you don't sound Latina, or you're so articulate. And those kinds of things happen on a daily basis to Black women and women of color that it's exhausting. It is exhausting to get up in the morning and have to always be on guard.
Right.
And those types of situations, the lack of education, you perceive, that's one of the things that I work hard at, even at Dress for Success, to make everybody aware. Some of these women that are going through the programs this isn't the same Dress for Success, right? I know that from the past 11 years of what Dress for Success used to be and what it is now. And these women are highly educated. Situations just happen. It could happen to you or I at any given time.
Right.
And our education there are biases and perceptions that they believe women, because they're here, they might not be educated.
Yes.
Or, right?
You're absolutely right. There's a stereotype about who our women are. Yes. And it is wrong. It is dead wrong.
Big wrong, big bias, right? There is so I live in a $300,000 home. But that doesn't mean, first of all, how did I get it? Was it an inheritance? Was it maybe before I was able to afford it, but I'm not making the money that I was making before? These women, when they're going out here, the job market is tough as it is. But when they are faced with hiring managers and HR professionals, and I'm sorry, I know I got some of my HR girls on the phone, but some of them come with their biases. They come with their biases.
Where you live, where you can work.
Where you can live, where you can work, or your name does not sound white. So I'm not even going to look at your resume. I'm going to just, get Lakeisha versus Laura. Lakeisha's resume is going in the garbage because she's Black.
Not even that, though. I bet you, just if you can't pronounce the name, instead of making the effort to pronounce it, it's easier to just say, let me go to the next candidate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another one. Exactly. You have people, there's this whole courseware around cultural intelligence, right? So you've got emotional intelligence, you've got diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. And then there's this cultural intelligence in really understanding where women are and people, period, right? And how to embrace different cultures, but not stereotyping and putting them in a box. So just because my name sounds a certain way does not mean that you know me. I love to use the analogy around the iceberg, right? So at the tip of the iceberg, what you see is a Black woman of a certain age, right? Of a certain age. And that's it. You don't know my journey. You don't know my story. You don't know my education level. I may wear rings on my finger, does not mean I'm married. And if I'm married, it does not mean that I might be in a same-sex marriage or not. You don't know my education level. You don't know my religion. Just because I wear a cross doesn't mean that I'm Christian. Just because I wear a Star of David doesn't mean that I'm Jewish. But people look at that before they take that deep dive to understand and have a conversation.
Right. They already form an opinion.
Start forming biases
Right.
that she must be, and that's one of the things, like I coach the women when we go through resumes about taking off addresses, taking off things. You've got to get your foot in the door.
Right.
Right. And the part that your address can keep people. So she's from Newark, or she's from Basking Ridge. Oh, she's from Basking Ridge. We can't afford her. Or she's from Newark. She won't be able to get there.
Right.
Right. All of those factors of biases when, I talk to staffing agencies all the time, telling them about candidates and saying, don't worry about the fact of where they live. Let them tell you if it's a problem.
Right.
And obviously it's not, because they're applying for the job. Is the person qualified?
Right.
And to go through that, they call these little biases, these paper cuts, like micro inequities, microaggressions, that women go through. It's tiring.
Right.
Now, so I've got to fight to get a job. When I get the job, I have to be on guard. Mind you, I've got to be careful when I'm traveling. I had one of the clients that was in the program worked for this communications company. I won't say their name, but every time they would drive to work, they were being pulled over by the police for no reason.
Because they couldn't possibly be in that right neighborhood, right?
Right. You don't belong here. Having to go through that on a daily basis is exhausting. There's another book out by Dr. Winter around Black fatigue. Black women and women of color are tired of the bias, tired of having to explain ourselves, just flat out exhausted.
Right.
It's like every day, what battle are we going to be facing? What are they going to be facing? Because even when I have been in Dress for Success arenas, Dress for Success Worldwide, Dress for Success Northern New Jersey, people have walked up to me and thought I was a client. Now, I'm fine with that, but don't make the assumption that everybody you see that doesn't look like you
Is a
is a
client.
client.
Right. Right. I think also with COVID, this pandemic has really made things a lot worse for women in general, and that
Yes.
because they are the caregivers, they are the providers, that many single moms, but even if not, I have to tell you, my husband works from home, and it's still on me to take care of the kids. And I think that employers then have that assumption that maybe we shouldn't hire them, because how are they going to juggle work with having kids? How are they going to juggle that with remote schooling? And I would venture to bet that a lot of our women are going to suffer from that bias while they try to get back in the workforce now.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes. I most definitely do. My screen just went away, so I'll be back in a second.
That's okay. I lost my volume before, so you can lose your screen. I could see you though, so don't make any funny faces.
Okay. Now it's just technology at its finest.
I'm telling
It's
you.
just, you gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Yes.
But yeah, and those battles, and when you think about it, you've got single mothers, a lot of single mothers, right? That are trying to figure out how to balance their kids and the workplace, right? Or like one of the women who's in the program said, I have no kitchen table. My kids are being homeschooled on a TV tray, sharing one tablet. My daughter is in the bedroom, high school, doing classes, I'm working in the bathroom, right?
Right.
Because that's the only other room I have. So the battle is real
Right.
for women. And people start to make judging and biases about where people live. I love watching the news, but they put this slant on this zooming and what you should do with your space and how you should look and how you should show up and everything else. Not everybody's situation is like that. But here again, media feeds into the bias, right? And
Right.
start making you think that people should look or be a certain way in this virtual world. And that's not the case.
Right. Yeah, I looked at one of the newscasts had somebody and they showed the background of their beautiful house that the kitchen was like the size of my house. And it was, and it's, you're right, because then you hold yourself to that expectation. And if it doesn't look like that, are you less? Are you, so you're fighting that image as well.
Right. And being uncomfortable.
Right.
One of the things that, you were talking about how it impacts the lives and the members of DFS, and this as well as I had said before, your confidence is already shot when you've lost your job, right, for a long time. In your heart of hearts, or feel anyway, that it was because of your age or because of financial situations in a company, whatever, that it was not of your doing, but your confidence is gone. And now you're going to try to go out here in this world to find a new opportunity, and you got to have the tools and the skills to do that. And every place that you face is somebody saying some sort of bias to you. You don't look, you don't speak, you don't dress, you're not from a certain area, and it wears on you.
Right.
And now with the pandemic, it doesn't help even more.
No, I was going to say, even with accents, people are perceived to be less intelligent because they don't speak the way that other people want to hear. If you've got a thick accent, they assume that you're not as smart as they are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got news for you. Everybody has an accent.
Oh, I know.
Everybody has an accent. And that goes down to whether you are from Cali to the Carolinas, Jersey accent, my Midwestern Marine in his accent. Everybody's got an accent.
Yep.
But then again, to your point, what does that, can I do the job?
Right.
Right.
Do you have a few strategies that you can share with us to overcome or control your unconscious bias? I guess the first step is knowing that you have bias, right?
You just did it. I'm done. That's it. You got to know, right? And identify what those blind spots are, right? And just stop for a minute. Take that pause and really think about, who am I looking at? And I need to know that person better, right? Make no assumptions. They always say about assumptions, and I don't have to say it on this call, but we know what assumptions do, right? And so if you stop a minute and say, wait, and don't judge. Is it hard to do? Absolutely.
Right.
I'm not saying that I started this diversity work in the 90s. That's how long we've been working in diversity around here, in the 90s. And I had my own journey. Okay. I had my own journey conversations, and I have them now with the women in the classes, my other clients, because it doesn't stop once you go, oh, well, I went to a diversity class, I'm smart, I know everything. And sometimes I have to check my own biases and what I'm seeing, and making sure that I'm not making the judgment Because the other part about this, as human beings, let's just break it down to that part. We are all carrying something right now. We don't know what people are dealing with. So don't make the assumption because I look a certain way or I talk a certain way that my journey isn't relevant.
Right.
Because everybody's got something. Everybody has been, I know myself, and I know many women on this call that I have talked to have had losses because of COVID. And that grief is not finished yet. They're carrying a feeling of incompletion, a feeling of anger. We lost a client at Dress for Success because of COVID. And the other clients have lost parents and family members. There is a lot of pain that people are walking around with. So because I don't speak the way you feel that I should speak or I should look, you're missing a fabulous opportunity to know me.
Right. So really it's taking pause, stopping
You gotta,
yourself and see how you're feeling. And what about, I think at one point when we were talking, you had mentioned your circle. When you look at who's around you, your
mm-hmm.
your circle of trust, or what do they look like? If everyone in your circle looks just
Looks,
like you and sounds like you and everything else, are you really opening yourself up to be exposed and to experience and to embrace other people?
mm-hmm. But you know what? That's okay, right? So you got your trusted, they call it the trusted 10, right? You got this circle and they look like you, they come from the same neighborhoods, communities, or whatever. That's okay, but you need to expand that trusted 10, right? And learn how to, what is the word I want to say? Expand your experiences. For an example, I have a very large network of women and friends and colleagues, and I had never been to a Passover Seder. So I went and I experienced something different. One of my family members had decided to change her faith. And so I went with her to the mosque to learn. You've got, the only way that it changes, the only way that biases, unconscious stereotypes and prejudging changes is when you take that little tip in the water and start experiencing something different.
Right.
Whether it's in your community, whether you're reading something, you know me, I'll give you a book in a minute on whatever you want to learn. But the self-awareness and investing in moving from an ally, because I think everybody on this Zoom is an ally, right? We all are concerned about what's going on. But I'm going to challenge you to go from an ally to an advocate, and from an advocate to an ambassador, and from an ambassador to an accomplice, and being anti-racist. You got to put more skin in the game eventually, because there is enough out here of issues of bias that we all can work on, that's going on in our communities. If you've got issues around education, I remember when one of my friends was talking to me about what their kids were learning and how inadequate that was. If you've got a problem around education, then start sitting in the Board of Education centers, right? If you've got an issue around healthcare, you got to start getting into the healthcare, because there's enough out here for us all to work on.
That's true.
Of biases and inequities that have been going on in this country for decades.
Right. Right. So once we have these conversations, once we take pause, knowing what we know now, how can we as individuals make that difference? Is it just getting involved? Is it just the reading? I think there's this urgency now. And not that there was, not that racial inequity is new, not that gender gaps and all these other things are new, but it seems now that people are just paying a lot more attention to it. What else can we do? And like, who else should be talking about this and why?
Well, I'll go back to what I originally said about, identifying yourself, right? And saying, yeah, I want to know more. I don't know what I don't know. The whole Johari's window, that there's that corner over there says, I don't even know what I don't know.
Right.
So I'm going to do that first. Then I'm going to go, well, let me do some reading before I start talking to people, right? Let me try to learn about what's going on. There is the Harvard implicit bias. So how biased am I? You could, and I can make sure that I get you the link that anybody could take the Harvard implicit bias and kind of see where you are. Am I really having, concerns about who I'm interacting with? After you do that, is to have conversations with people, your friends, your family, how they feel, and going, and the communities have all different types of events, right? Is to go to the events and sit there and be a sponge. I sit on these Zoom calls. Some days I'm not participating at all. I'm sitting there being a sponge and just absorbing and learning. Because as long as we are breathing, we have an opportunity to learn.
Right.
And then after you get through all of that, then you got to get a seat at the table. And when you get a seat at the table, you got to have a voice. Is to get involved, sitting on boards, sitting in organizations. That's how you can help make that change.
Okay. Thank you, Willa.
You're welcome. You're
Um,
welcome.
we've had so many discussions, just even the two of us. For me, as a white woman, growing up where I grew up, my friends, I pride myself on the fact that all of my friends are something different than I am. But the fact that it took me till I was 40 some years old, I'm not gonna, it's 40 something, to realize that I need more work. I need to do more work. It's not okay to just have friends and then turn off the news when I see stories and hear things. And, I will tell you that this year has been one of the greatest years of growth for me personally, because now I'm listening a lot more. And instead of just going about my business, I'm taking time, to teach my boys and to talk to them and, you know, really just seize the opportunity, because if I don't, who's going to do it? And
There's somebody going to do it
the wrong way, probably.
It's gonna be the television. It's
Right.
going to be the community. Because if you don't teach them, they're going to learn not what you want them to learn.
Right.
But Dr. Maya Angelou always said, when you know better, you do better.
That's right.
And now that you know,
You
you
can't go
can't
back.
help.
Yep. You have
You
to.
can't go back.
You
Right.
can't go back. So thank you for explaining all of this to us. We're going to open up for some questions. And before anyone logs off, I wanted to let you know that at the end of this, we are so happy that everyone joined here tonight for this important topic. We have our Women's Leadership Summit coming up on March 12th. We're so happy to have you part of this conversation. We're offering a special promotion for the attendees tonight. That's a special coupon code to save a little money on the registration to attend. And it's just for the wonderful people that have joined us tonight. There's a code that we'll give you at the end that will give you a discount. So the ticket would be $125. And I'm telling you, it's a great day. And there's a lot of discussion, and it's a day of empowerment. So if you guys can come, that would be fantastic. But before I go any further, I'd like to open it up for questions. If you want to either put it in the chat or I don't know how we're going to do this. There's a lot of faces on here.
I know. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I'm going to
So,
turn it off
this-
speaker view and put maybe raise hands or something. I don't know.
I think somebody just said something.
Liz,
So it's,
Liz.
hi, Liz Johnson. Great to see you, Willa and Kim, and thank you for inviting me. So Willa, I have a question for you on bias. Do you think that bias is learned in childhood in the home? I have a belief system that I think that that is where it starts. I would like
Yes.
to know your point of view.
It starts in the home. And then from the home to the school, from the school to the religious place house of worship that you go to. It starts in your house. Children when you come into this world, you are born with a clean slate, just as bald as possible and full of learning. Where do you learn first? You know, I remember when I had one of my little cousins was cursing. She's 3 years old and she was saying words better than me. And I said, "Where'd you learn that from?" I heard it from mommy, because they role model what they see and what they hear. So it starts there. And then, so you've got the parenting, the community, and then you've got that television. And now you've got social media. So all of those things are feeding into people's thought processes and behaviors. We know that from what we see even as adults right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Honored to be on this. Thank
Thank
you very much. Very educational.
thank you, Liz. Anyone else have a question? Oh, Nancy, you're
Hi,
on,
Nancy, your mic.
you're on mute.
Turn your mic on. There you go.
I've really enjoyed this, and I'm probably the oldest person on the call. And I agree with
No, you're younger than me. Don't even try.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because that would be bias, right? But my point being is that the last person that chatted, it is learned. It is learned. But I think it's learned in our community, in our culture, in our house, in our school, in our town. And then now we're the adults. Now we are the decision makers, we're the employers, we're the people hiring. And now if you don't look like me, act like me, the same age as me, because I've already done that whole realm of you're a woman, you're married, you have kids, and now you're too old. That's when you make someone move out of their comfort zone, that's when the pushback goes like this. Okay, well, I'm going to find a reason why you're not meeting the criteria for this job, because you're making me think outside my comfort zone.
Yeah,
That's true.
true.
And I've been, like I said, I've been through, when I was a young woman, interviewing for a job, I would take my wedding ring off because, oh, she's married. If she's married and she's probably this age, she's probably going to want to have kids, and then she's going to want to have to go out on maternity. So we didn't even talk about any of that on it. You would never even say you were married or had kids when you were first hired. Never.
But now under social media where anybody can find you and
Of course. And I guess that was the comfort that you could hide a little bit. It was tough. It was tough.
Right.
Yeah. When you think about the privileges that we could even have by saying that we're married, but then you look at our gay, lesbian, transgendered people,
Right.
and how much they have had to hide who they really are, and not being hired, or when they get hired, they're looked at a certain way because they put a picture of their partner on their desk, or they can't bring their whole selves to work
Nope.
because because of biases against the community of people.
Right.
Agreed.
Hey, Willa, it's Catherine. Can I say something?
Hello, Catherine. How are you?
Hi, good. Sorry I'm not on screen tonight. Anyway, I would just like to let the group know that I am one of the volunteers in the Steps to Success program with Willa. And I work for Bear right in Whippany, but I'm working from home for almost a year now. However, I want to let everybody know that Bear is very much aware of what is going on, and we do have a diversity officer, and we do training, and even for the mock interviews that Bear did in the past, we always made sure that when we had our volunteer interviewers, that we did a short program on unconscious bias. And we recently had, when the unfortunately the George Floyd death, we opened up our RISE group, which is the African American group, and we had a very open dialogue between all of the employees, and all of us got to express how we feel. And I myself, as a white woman, said, I know I have white privilege and I have to do something about it. And as Kim mentioned, that she doesn't have to, she could turn off the news and not have to worry about it. And I want to do something about that, because that really bothers me, that I don't have to worry if I get pulled over by a police officer that I'm going to lose my life. So that's something that I'm very conscious of, and I'm trying very hard. And, as you mentioned, I will work harder to be an advocate and to be an ally.
Yeah.
So I want everybody there to know that Bear is right with you, and we're doing all we can to.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine. One of the things that, I look at now, there are a lot of chief diversity officers coming up in all these companies, right? Because they're trying to address the situation, the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, Black Lives Matter, all of it, right? And they're coming out and they're putting all these people in the chief diversity officer roles. And I think that's wonderful. Somebody's gonna be having their eye on it. My question is, and what I'm looking at is what's behind that. Does that chief diversity officer have a staff, have funding to make the changes, to make the impacts, and to create inclusive environments, and not only throwing money at organizations, which I think is great too, and the historically Black colleges and all of that, but what are you going to do in the internal workings of your company that we don't have to sit here and have a conversation about you're not hiring me because of the color of my skin, or because of my age, or because of my accent. That's what needs to change. And the employment systems need to change to be more open.
Hi, it's Gil Tilstra. How are you tonight?
Hi,
Hey,
good. How are you?
Gail.
I'd like to just piggyback on something that Nancy said. Currently, I'm now working with employment managers, hiring managers, and I'm actually training them on how to interview effectively, and of course, and virtually as well. And one of the things I've added into my program, of course, is about biases. But I've also said, which is what Nancy said, I'm telling hiring managers, don't hire people just like you. Don't do that. All right. We all tend to feel we need somebody just like who we are, because if you do, you're missing the boat and you're missing some really qualified talent. So I think what's happening is, especially in the programs I'm offering, we're addressing what Willa said. We're addressing those issues. And really, it's not about what you look like or who you are. It's really, just like everyone said earlier, the qualifications you bring to the company and the potential you bring to the company. So I'm trying to do my part.
Good job, Gail.
And that's it. I mean, this is a big elephant. It's not like we can just go, snap our fingers and everything changes. There's
Yeah.
pockets of things that have to be changed all around. It's just like when you look at healthcare and how doctors talk to women,
True, true.
okay,
Very different.
very
Mhm.
different,
Mhm.
okay. So the healthcare has its own issues. Every place there is something that needs to be changed.
You're absolutely right. Does anyone else have any questions? Because I have another one for
So
Willa.
I think we just have to keep it at the forefront all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
I have a,
Kim. Oh, hey, Caroline. Caroline, hi.
I think one of the challenges I have found on with unconscious bias and learning about it more is it's validating that feeling when you are in a meeting or in a space where maybe you're being treated or said, you know, good morning, good morning, good morning, but it's how you're treated in each of those conversations.
Uh-huh.
And is there advice that, Willa, that you have where if you are feeling in that moment or you're feeling displaced and you start kind of questioning yourself, right? Is it me? Is it them? Or if you're in an interview and you really feel like, oh, this person, because of my age or my race or I'm a woman, is kind of dismissing me. Is there any tips while you're in that space, or concepts around navigating that conversation? Or I mean, it's a difficult question, but because it's somebody else's unconscious bias that you're feeling. Do you have any suggestions around how to navigate that when you're in it?
Well, there's a couple that I when I even coach this in the classes, is knowing that that's going to come up front. So being prepared to know that that may happen. It's just like I tell them, you may be qualified for that position, but at the same time, you can also turn around and not be hired, right? Regardless of what you have in the job. So know that coming in so that you're not blindsided. My younger self was a lot more sarcastic than my older self if you were treating me some kind of way. But I think what I tell people is to do your best. And if it's for you, it's going to happen. Because we know going in that I went into a couple of interviews when I left corporate America and I called myself going to go work in another corporate setting, that based on the way that I was being interviewed, it wasn't going to happen. I still finished the interview. I maintained my professionalism and did what I was supposed to do in the process. One of the interviews, and I came back and I sit in my car and I do like a wait. And I read this, it's called wait. What am I thinking, right? Am I thinking what that I'm feeling and experiencing? Is it valid? Is it not valid? And then sometimes I just leave it alone and not stress over it. In a meeting when I'm an employee and I've been told to go get the water at a meeting and I'm leading the meeting. So how do I handle those situations? I look at goodwill. Most of the time, unless you're doing illicit, implicit bias, most of the time, people don't mean it. They don't mean to hurt your feelings. They don't mean to make some assumptions. So I'm going to work on the intent and the impact of what you did. And try to maintain some kindness and graciousness when I kind of rip you a new one. Right? But I'm going to be kind about it. I'm at that point where I don't tolerate it because of a woman of a certain age. You get a temperament about tolerating certain things. I see Michelle nodding her head. So yeah, it's one of those things that you sit there and you go, okay, I know that person has a good mind and a good heart. They don't mean it. And you let it go. Because see, there's battles you got to pick. And some battles are not worth picking at, right? If it impacts my salary, now we're going to have a conversation. But if it was because you weren't raised properly to speak to me when you come into a meeting, I'm not going to fight that battle. Kelly's saying, yeah, it's not worth the battle. Did that kind of answer your question, Caroline? Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right.
I have
Kim, Michelle, you got a question?
Well,
Six.
I have a comment regarding the hiring process and the biases and things like that. I went through that whole process last year until I decided to do something completely different. But how the conversation with recruiters, the process with ATS systems, the process with job boards needs to be reviewed, because to the point that was made earlier, if you're looking at location, if you're looking at name and you can't spell it, it kicks it out. Or you put your resume up on a job board and it goes to that ATS system before you've even applied for the job, you're already disqualified.
Yep.
So I know that there's millions of people out of work, millions of people who are looking, trying to reinvent and pivot. But if you can't get past that, you have no shot.
No.
You know? And then being a woman of color, of, different whatever background, ethnicity, all of that, it's very disheartening.
Yeah.
So to those who are on there who are HR focused and everything, that's something that I just wanted to throw out there, because that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I pipe in real quick with that? I really would appreciate if I could.
Hi, Cindy.
Sure.
Hi there. So Michelle, you're 100% correct. And I have to tell you that I love the HR field. It's been my entire career. I have a huge passion around it, but that is a part of it that is really upsetting to me, right? That you apply and your resume goes into this big black abyss, right?
Yeah.
Or the best one, because it's happened to me. You apply and literally 10 minutes later, you get the reject letter.
Oh, yes.
I mean, how does that happen? So I
The
think
auto reply.
sorry, we're not interested. I call it the no thank you letter, right? But it comes 10 minutes after
Yeah.
you apply. So,
Yeah,
and so look, everyone knows that the way you get a job is not by applying through online. Like, that's just not the way you get a job, right? I forgot what the percentage is, but it's a very low percentage of people who get jobs by just applying online. You have to network and you have to leverage LinkedIn. You have to, I'll tell you, my son, I'm quite shocked what my son does. He'll apply for a job, he'll go on LinkedIn and he'll find somebody in that company and reach out to them. And it's really worked for him, I have to tell you. So that's really the way. I mean, because you have to bypass those systems. And I even tell people, bypass HR and go find the hiring manager. Skip HR. And I'm in HR, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
I did that. I will share a story with you. I did that. I reached out to the recruiting manager, and through LinkedIn message, whatever I had, I worked with a career coach on this. So I did all of that.
Yeah.
And she came back, she said to me, I don't see in your resume that you have logistics, some terminology that they used within the company. I don't even remember what it was anymore. I was just mortified by it, but you don't have something in logistics. And I was like, excuse me, I worked in travel and hospitality for a travel management company. Our human logistics was all we worked on.
Yeah.
She ghosted me afterwards. And then she has a podcast that she does about being ghosted and being hired. I was just, I couldn't believe it. So there's a lot to be learned in that whole field.
Yeah. Well,
So,
they were saying that
I stopped looking.
Yeah, they said 50% of the Black sounding names on an applicant's resume has less likely a chance of a callback than a white sounding name. That, when you think about first generation, there's a book called Bridges Over Poverty, and it talks about first generation educate people who go into corporate America. And there is nobody there to teach them how to deal with navigate with the sharks. First generation college, first generation corporate America. My daddy could not tell me anything about what it was like to be in corporate America, how to find a mentor, how to navigate my way on the promotion line, the importance of learning how to play golf. Okay, and the good old boys club and all of those things. I did baptism by fire because I'm first generation, and there's a lot of first generation people that don't have parents that sat in corporate America that can teach them how to go about doing this. And that's
So true.
and that's our job now, like in Dress for Success with these classes, whether it's Bridge or Steps, which starts again in March. All of these classes is to help women learn how to navigate, how to deal with conflict, how to get that confidence and that swag to go in there and ask for that raise and ask for that promotion and to find that job. Right? All right, Kim, I know you had a question for me. What was the question?
It might be a long one, and I don't want to hold you up too much, but earlier you had mentioned going from ally to advocate and, all the A's. I don't know the difference between all the A's, what they all were.
Oh, goodness. So you got an ally, right? And the ally kind of is that person that is there for you, works in their own little way in understanding about oppression and certain issues and works in their private space to do that, right? And they're supportive of you, and that's good. Then you've got the advocate. So that's the person who's really publicly speaking out, right? And supports change in policy. So they've got policies that they want to work on, and they're advocating for that. So like I am an ally and an advocate, an ambassador and an accomplice when it comes down to LGBTQ community. So I'm going in that battle. I will be an ambassador and speak on their behalf, right? In audiences like this about the importance of supporting that community. And as an accomplice in there, I'm really ready to walk arm in arm with you to fight the battle. Because that takes a whole lot of, what is the word I want to say? Confidence, knowing that the battle's going to be hard and be willing to go in there and fight the battle. It's kind of like a cornucopia of civil rights. So it's all of those people, depending upon what area that battle you want to pick, is how you decide how you want to play. Did that answer? I'll tell you what you are later, okay?
I knew you would. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, I guess we should close tonight, and I want to.
Oh, wait.
We got one?
We can't close yet. Because we got more of these coming, right?
Oh,
right?
God,
Next month.
Yes.
Next month, it's about women in the workplace. We've got that one coming up. And then we're going to be, wait a minute, I got my list. Hold on.
Schedule.
Did I bring my schedule? Did I bring the schedule?
I can bring mine if you don't have it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about what is it about volunteering. We're also going to be talking about elder care, caregivers, caretakers, and the importance of all of what women have to do. I think we've got a lineup till the end of the year, right, Kim?
We got it till December. So
yeah, so this isn't the one and done. We're gonna ride this train as far as we can.
Thank you, Willa. Yes,
You're
and
welcome.
we're gonna try to keep it consistent. It'll be another Thursday night. I'm checking now. I think it's March 18th at
Yes.
7 o'clock.
Yep.
So we'll be sending something out about that soon, and that way you guys can get in on that. Our code for this evening for our conference is Fireside 21. So when you go to our website for our conference, it's Fireside 21, and there is just enough spots for everybody here that has attended tonight. It's one time per user. So I'm really excited for that and hope that you guys will be able to join us for our summit. I can't thank you enough, Willa, for having the patience, the time to constantly teach all of us how to be better and how to do better. And I'm so thankful that everybody came tonight to be part of this, because
Thank you.
this is Dress for Success. This is what we do. And I'm proud to be part of that. So thank you guys so much.
You can see why I've been around for 11 years. When you love what you do and you love women and you love the issues and you want to support and champion them, then this is the best place to be. This is the best place to be. Love it.
Thank you, Willa. Good
You're
night,
welcome.
everybody.
Hey,
Good
Kim,
night.
Kim, can I just jump in 1 second?
Yep.
Sorry, that code is case sensitive with a capital F.
Oh, case sensitive. We'll send it out by email as well.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey, Shelly Bell. Hey, baby girl.
Hey, what did you think?